What's up everyone and welcome back to Reload Reacts episode 55. My name is Trey and today we are going to look through r/NuclearRevenge, the subreddit for those who try to take their revenge to the most extreme of lengths. Sorry if my voice is a bit weird today, I'm a bit sick at the moment. This first post is by A Vicious Tradition. Excuse me Satan, I think you're in my seat. I'm going to start the story off by saying that this is absolutely not one of my most shining moral moments, and I'm well aware that I was a straight up a-hole for doing what I did. My only real defense is that I was in a super bad place mentally and needed a mountain's worth of therapy. If you're curious about the circumstances around her, check my profile. B was evil in human form. Now, on to the revenge. I was a weird kid growing up. Really weird. It was mostly because I was being abused at home and forcibly isolated. My social skills were so underdeveloped that I had difficulty reading human faces aside from my grandmother, grandfather and father. Being the weird kid meant that I was a juicy target for bullies. It never stopped, but there was one bully that I hated more than any of the others. We'll call her Holly. This girl never passed up an opportunity to make my life heck. And since she lived across the street from me, there was nowhere I could avoid her. Holly treated me like garbage. Here are a few examples. She would put dog C in our mailbox on a regular basis. She let my dog out of my yard and I was never able to get her back. She would also sit on her porch with her friends and roast the heck out of me to entertain them if I so much as put a toe outside of my front door. It went on for years. I hated her with the fury passion of 1,000 suns, but while my grandmother was still alive, there was nothing I could do about Holly. If I did anything to her or fought back in any way, my grandmother would punish me for it, and I was more afraid of her than I was Holly for a very good reason. So I made a plan. I suffered through all the abuse and promised myself that when I was older, I would make Holly pay for what she did to me. Thinking of what I was going to do to her, when the time was right, was sometimes the only thing that kept me going. Over time, Holly grew up and eventually she left me alone and stopped being an a-hole. Unfortunately for her, by then it was too late. I didn't give an S about her new moral epiphany. I had been nursing my grudge for 2 decades and it was time for a reckoning. I was going to destroy that bee. When my grandmother finally died, it was go time. And I'd had 20 years to plan. I wasn't idle while I waited. I had made it my mission in life to learn as much about Holly as possible, and to do it, I became friends with a few people on the periphery of her social circle. Eventually, I knew more about her and her life than her own mother did. The first step I took in my plan was getting her fired from her job. It took longer than I would have liked, but eventually I managed it. Holly worked at a doctor's office, and I knew that the doctor she worked for was super Christian. Very straight edge, upstanding type of guy. He also had a huge influence on the local community. I decided to become a patient at his office, scheduling my visits to be on the days Holly was off work. After a couple of visits, I just happened to notice Holly in the staff photo on the waiting room wall. I made a show of looking surprised and then concerned. I got to the exam room and the doctor came in shortly after. The expression on my face got his attention, and he asked me what was wrong. I told him that even though I didn't want to, as a Christian, I couldn't keep my knowledge a secret and still sleep at night because I just couldn't let him endanger his soul and reputation by doing nothing. I had his full attention then, and I asked him as one fellow Christian to another not to tell anyone where he got the information I was about to give him. After he promised he would, I told him that I knew Holly was using illegal drugs. He was absolutely floored and at first he didn't believe me. I told him that I understood his skepticism entirely, but it was easy enough to prove or disprove my information with a drug test. If I was wrong, he lost nothing. If I was right, he was saving himself trouble from down the road. He finally agreed to test her, and he tested everyone else too, so that it didn't look like Holly was the only target. See, I wasn't actually lying. Holly smoked an S-load of a substance, and I knew that because it was my dad she used to get it from, he'd been her substance dude since she was like 15. Her test came back positive for the substances, and much to my surprise, also Xanax. Oopsie. The doctor fired Holly on the spot when the results of the urinalysis came back, and then he called to thank me for telling him what was going on, and before he hung up, he told me that I truly walked with the Lord. Y'all will never know how hard I had to fight not to laugh at the depths of his wrongness. I thought I was going to pop a blood vessel. Phase 1, complete. I know what you're thinking. It's just a job. And it's not like she can't go get another one, right? Losing a job isn't the end of the world. Well, you'd be wrong. Remember how I said her boss had a very high reputation in our area? That man called every single hospital and doctor's office in the state personally to make sure that none of them would hire Holly and risk liability and loss of community trust for associating with her. Holly's field of study was all pertaining to the medical profession, so her education was rendered worthless because nobody would hire her. I wasn't done yet though. Nope, not even close. She lost her job, and because she had no income, her car got repossessed. She still had her family though. 2 kids and a fiance. Who needs families, am I right? With the help of a good friend of mine, we catfished the F out of her fiance. My friend is hot AF, and she let me use pictures of her to prove that she was really real. She even got on Skype with him once. When he finally made arrangements for a face-to-face encounter and booked a hotel room, I texted the screenshots of everything to Holly from a burner number. To say the excrement impacted the oscillating unit would be a vast understatement. They broke up. The wild thing was a whole ordeal, and Holly was devastated. She had 2 kids, no job, and now no fiance who could help her keep the family afloat. It says here that a normal person would have stopped then, though I think a normal person would have stopped way before this point. But anyway, unfortunately I am not normal and I was going full scorched earth. I seethed for 20 years, no way in heck was I going easy on her. Phase 3. With her fiance gone and no job, Holly was struggling badly. She needed money and she needed it quickly before she and the kids got evicted. Blue candy is a giant problem in my area. It's high risk, but it's also fast money. And so I started subtly mentioning Holly's situation among my more legally questionable family. Eventually, one of my family's friends, who happened to be a blue candy cook, got in contact with Holly and offered her an S-load of cash to let him cook at her house. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, 2 days and then done forever. Holly was desperate, so she said yes. Everything went smoothly at first, but dead in the middle of the cook, someone called an anonymous tip about an active cook in progress to the local narcotics unit. They rolled up on Holly's house at about 3 AM and caught everybody inside, including Holly, red-handed, making blue candy. Watching her cry when they handcuffed her and put her in the police cruiser was one of the most gloriously satisfying moments of my life. She was in deep legal doo-doo, and to make a bad situation even worse, most houses where labs are discovered aren't deemed habitable afterwards because the toxic fumes from the chemicals used to make the drug get everywhere, and it's super hard and time consuming to clean. It's up to the property owner to either hire a hazmat team to clean it or condemn it and tear it down. A lab cleanup costs thousands of dollars. It would have cost more money to clean it than the entire property was worth, so it got torn down with everything Holly owned still inside. So you can't take things out of a blue candy lab because they're going to be covered in toxic residue. It can make you very sick, especially young children. Everything in the residence is usually counted as a loss. Now, some people sneak in and grab stuff anyway, but whatever, it's their funeral. But since Holly was still sitting in jail, there was no way for her to grab anything, and none of her close family were interested in risking getting caught sneaking into the house and being accused of stealing or tampering with a crime scene. Holly ended up in jail for a while, and while she was gone, the court gave their father, ex-fiancé, sole custody of their children, and Holly was only given supervised visitation, 2 hours every Saturday if I recall correctly. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and mine was freezing. I was behind every single bad thing that happened in Holly's life, in one way or another, for an entire 5-year period. She decided she liked bullying me and making my life heck, and she figures there would never be any consequences. Instead, I took her reputation, her job, her fiancé, got her arrested and convicted of a felony, and her children taken from her, and the best part is that she has no clue I did it to this very day. She'd forgotten about me. What she did to me impacted my life forever, but to her, it wasn't even important enough to her to bother remembering. I was nothing to her, so she never connected me to her problems. Last I heard, she was in rehab for alcoholism and had her parental rights terminated permanently. After she lost her kids, she just sort of gave up and crawled into a bottle and never came out again. I was tempted to tell her, but I decided that the helplessness and confusion about why everything suddenly went to heck in a handbasket was the better plan, because that means that every now and then I can contact her and pretend to give an S about her troubles to get a fresh revenge high about her newest tale of woe. She thinks I'm the nicest person she's ever met. Laughing crying emoji. Edit. A lot of people are under the impression that the things Holly did to me were minor and didn't merit my reaction because the ones I spoke about were small. I guess I was trying to make myself a little less pathetic in front of people. She did way more to me than the specifics I mentioned. It's just embarrassing to admit to being weak enough that she could do it to me at all. She beat my A more than a few times. Once she and her friends force-fed me S. Actual S. No, I don't know what kind. She shoved me down an embankment and I chipped my front tooth on a cinder block. The list goes on, and I don't really feel like going into it, but suffice to say it wasn't just teasing. It doesn't make what I did much better, but I didn't do it over something minor. I am also female. Also, we lived in a trailer park, which is why they tore the house down rather than clean it. Her house wasn't worth more than $3,000 on its best day. Those are all the details I intend to add here, as any others would make things too specific. Wow, that was insane. This next post is by Outrageous Duck 164. Mess with my kids? Lose your house. I've 50M, got 2 stepsons, who I just call my sons as I've been in their life since they're 8 and 10 and are now young men. My wife and I made it a point to have a great relationship with their dad, Jason. We made sure he had a chance to be around as much as possible, even staying at our place frequently to be around his boys as he lived over half an hour away and couldn't afford to live closer. Jason had a crazy ex who had tried to claim they were married, variously saying common law or that they were married in secret or married on an Indian reservation, but he had a restraining order out against her because she was nuts and had tried various ways to screw up his life. The ex is a horrible person. She had been arrested several times for forgery and fraud. She and Jason had a fury relationship, but he had it in his head that he should make it work, as he did like her daughters and grandson. But the ex got him sent to prison for violating his probation when he left the county to go to his mum's funeral and hadn't filed an appropriate form. I'm a little unclear on this part, but she played a major role in it. After he got out several months later, she wanted him back and he wasn't having it. He made a clean break, moved to a new town, but she continued to harass him, thus leading to the restraining order. She would send texts to people pretending to be police investigating, saying he was drunk driving or taking candy, or pretending to be friends/family to spread rumors and hurt him. She even sent texts to my kids from burner phones, pretending to be other family or friends, saying awful things about their dad. Jason passed unexpectedly of a heart attack, and it was a shock to all of us. He was finally living in peace, had great relationships with his friends and his sons, and was the happiest he had ever been. He didn't have much. He lived in a single wide trailer a friend had let him stay in for free. Some box of tools, old comics, video games, D&D books and modules, mementos from his times in the Marines, and an old 2009 pickup trucks, which, on several occasions, he had promised my older son, let's call him Paul. Jason didn't have a will, and my wife became the executor of the estate because at the time of death, both my sons were minors and sole heirs. We packed up the things out of Jason's trailer and took the truck, which had Jason's name on the title, but we had to wait for the death certificate to retitle it in Paul's name. But the ex called Jason's sister demanding the truck, saying it was hers and posting on Facebook she was reporting it as stolen, etc., which really peed me off. After we got the death certificate, we went to the DMV and found out that she had stolen the title to the truck by forgery, saying she was the only heir and we couldn't transfer the title. My son was driving around with a packet documenting everything in case he was pulled over for driving a stolen vehicle. We had to get a lawyer and start a special process that took several months before a director at the DMV fixed it, and we were able to get the title to the truck, with the ex continuing to threaten and cause problems and made everyone miserable and cost us several thousand in legal fees. Early last year, we got through probate court. The ex never showed, in spite of saying that she was the wife and sole heir. The court declared the boys as the sole heirs, and my wife as executor of the estate in their names. Instead of showing up, the ex sent an email to the court saying she couldn't make it because of work, she doesn't have a job, and that Jason was never around his kids. He didn't miss a single high school football game, home or away, and never missed a home track meet, and that they were just leeching off his SSI for the back child support. She went on with a bunch of other non-relevant S just to trash my wife and sons, and pretty much said it didn't matter what the judge said, that she should get everything. During this time, we found out that Jason's name was the deed on the ex's house. In order to get a reduction in property taxes because of Jason's disabled veteran status, she had filed papers to put him on the deed, but not the mortgage. If she had just left my kids alone, we would have let it go, but she pushed principle beyond a point of denial, so we filed suit for half the house. Property is worth about $380,000. We went to court, ordered mediation, and she rejected a mediated settlement of a fraction of the value which we would have taken. In April, her lawyer dropped her, and so she got a continuance on the first hearing. She then claimed that she had found a will from Jason designating her as sole heir, in addition to another signed paper that she found as a quitclaim deed from Jason for the house. I did wonder if it was this or her not paying him which caused him to drop her. She was going to go back to probate court to reopen appeal, probate, and needed time to do that, which the judge granted. On Tuesday, finally went to court on the deed to the house. She no-showed. The judge had inquiries to the probate court, and she never filed any papers. The trial lasted less than 10 minutes as the judge recorded the facts and awarded the state half the property. They will impanel 3 lawyers to determine how the property will be sold, and she's going to lose her house for the first time in her miserable life, face the consequences of her actions. Wow. Congratulations on winning the case, OP. I'm glad she no-showed it again. This next post is by Effective Fix 3235. Never pee off a rich redneck. This story is about my grandparents' friend. I was a young teen, but given the outcome, this story has stuck with me. I've sat on this story for a while, but it's so satisfying to see a gaggle of Karens taken down a notch that I figured I'd share. For the sake of this story, we will call my grandparents' friend William. Now, my grandparents knew William from way back. My grandmother knew him from school, and my grandfather met him after marrying my grandmother. Anyways, in the 60s, Grandma was a manager at the 7-Eleven. William led a crew that went there every day. It was the only gas station in a 30-minute radius, so everyone knew everyone in that sleepy coastal town kind of way. Now one day, William was doing a job down on the waterfront and slipped, fell, and broke his back. While he was healing from the operation and was broke as a joke, my grandma would always make sure to send him something to eat that she'd pay for when the crew would come in to grab their snacks and gas up, knowing William would simply skip the meal to save the money for his own family. My grandpa also took him to several doctor's appointments, since William couldn't drive for a while and his tiny little wife couldn't wrangle him into a car by herself. William never forgot that. 20 years ago, when he sold off his now very successful business and was a millionaire about 20 times over, he promptly told 90% of the world to go to heck, but kept those that had been always there for him close. Meanwhile, he never had moved from the house that he'd had since before he was rich. His only concessions to his wealth were trips with his wife to see the world and buying up quite a few acres of forested land around him. If you weren't his friend, you'd take him for every other blue-collar worker in the town. There was absolutely nothing obvious to show that he was worth tens of millions of dollars. After his wife died in the 90s, William decided to take up a new hobby. As he lived outside of the city limits, he set up a sawmill and woodworking shop, got the proper permits and everything. The saws were in a big, old, enclosed building in the middle of all that land, so in all honesty, no harm, no foul, right? Wrong. The family that had owned the forest behind William's land had just sold it to developers, thus the new luxury-gated neighbourhood, the first in the area, was born. Enter a plethora of Chads and Karens who were mostly from up north and had moved down south to take advantage of the better weather and nearby beach. It didn't take long before they decided to take offence to his little business venture on the other side of the 10-foot tall wall of their neighbourhood because it didn't fit with their image of their community. You know, the community he was decidedly not a part of, so they sued him. Didn't even try to start a dialogue with him, just up and sued him. William was livid. He was your typical coastal redneck, and he would be damned if those damn Yankees told him what to do on his own property. That was not within city limits nor located in an HOA. William countered with professional noise studies that showed that some of his kids in the neighbourhood drove vehicles that made more ambient noise than his little operation. Nope, the people in the neighbourhood simply threw more money at the lawyers to continue on with the lawsuit. Essentially, their plan was to bleed him dry. Their lawyers, who were not locals, actually told William's lawyer that he should probably advise his client to close the shop so that he wouldn't end up bankrupt due to the resources being thrown at him from the homeowners. Due to the relatively modest surroundings of his home, the neighbours nor the lawyers had any idea that the man was actually richer than just about all of them put together. All they saw was an older dude who drove a beat-up 80s model truck and wore Dickies jeans and work shirts that lived in what appeared to be a relatively modest home, especially compared to their McMansions. When William's lawyer told him about that conversation, William lost his effing mind. I clearly remember his screeching into my parents' driveway in that old work truck, cussing up a storm and ranting and raving before he even got in the house. He came to our house, why? Because my grandmother, bless her heart, was known as one of the most giving people in the world. Unless you peed her off. If you hurt her or someone she cared for, she became one of the most vindictive a-holes that could be found in town. I am not kidding when I say that her ability for revenge served cold was legendary amongst the locals. So William had come to the house for a dose of her deviousness. Us kids weren't allowed inside during that conversation. But after he left that day, I heard the adults talking about how he proceeded to hire quite a few private investigators to see if there would be any dirt to dig up on them. By them, I mean the dozens of people in the neighbourhood that were a part of that lawsuit. Lo and behold, there were apparently copious amounts of dirt to be had. I still remember him positively crowing about it to my grandparents one fine summer day months later. That 60-something-year-old man was as gleeful as the proverbial kid on Christmas morning. Why? Because after he learned what his little private army dug up, he started making some phone calls to various acquaintances in high places. The ensuing fallout meant that the lawsuit was dropped. There was quite a list of misdeeds that were discovered, but the one that I heard talked about by the adults that stuck out are: there were more than a handful of individuals that owed back child support. William very helpfully had the private investigators provide the mother's updated address and employment information so that they could pursue said child support / garnishment if they wanted to. On top of that, the IRS became very interested in several of those people as well as various other neighbours. Finally, one household ended up in prison because the investigators realised that they were drug dealers. The pictures of the transactions caught by the PIs were helpfully handed over to the sheriff's department. Moral of the story: never pee off a rich redneck. And that's gonna be it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stories in r/NuclearRevenge. Let me know what you'd like to listen to next in the comments section below. And also hit that subscribe button because I post new Reddit content every single day. There are 2 videos on the screen, one of which is for the most recent video, and another is for a video the YouTube algorithm thinks you'll want to watch next. My name is Trey, this was Reload Reacts, and I will see you in the next video. Hopefully I'm not as sick next time.